Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the very last A to I talk for the fall semester. It's really hard for me to believe that we are at the last one, and I'm a little sad to see these end, but rest assured, we will have an A to I lineup for you in the spring as well. I'm very excited about today's talk. We have 3 representatives from Atrium Health joining us today, and they're going to talk about diversity in their workplace. There are many reasons that these 3 women know a little something about diversity. And just one of those is that they are leaders in a company that has over 55,000 employees. It's an integrated healthcare company, Atrium Health, that runs over 40 hospitals, over 900 healthcare locations across North Carolina and Georgia, and spanning so many specialties, everything from pediatrics to nursing home care. So their clients are diverse, their employee base is diverse, and obviously this company is doing it very successfully. It's ranked very highly in the healthcare system rankings. It's such a pleasure to have you all here to talk with our students today. We have Tanya Bacon, who is Vice President of Talent Acquisition and Executive Recruiting. We have Arlene Cash, who is Atrium's Program Manager for Diversity and Inclusion. And we have B. Rodriguez, who is Atrium's Human Resources Business Partner. So Arlene, Tanya, B, thanks so much for being here today. Welcome. And with that, I am going to share your presentation so you can get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. And good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm Arlene Cash, as Jill mentioned, with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And thank you again, Jill, for this awesome invitation. Thank you to Jennifer for helping getting us acclimated to this platform as well. Very grateful to be sharing this presentation with wonderful leaders of Atrium Health, with Tanya Bacon and with B. Rodriguez. Excited to share information about the role of diversity and inclusion, as well as talent acquisition at Atrium Health. Before we get specifically into the presentation, each of us will briefly share why we do what we do, or our roles, and what gets us excited about the work that we do. So I was born on the island of Jamaica. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And I have been living in the Charlotte area now for over 20 years. And so I consider those 3 areas what I call the 3 areas of my cultural programming. So certainly having that immigrant experience, not being born in this country, but also growing up in New York City, which I consider the ultimate experience in exposure and diversity. And then adding to that, my experience here living in Charlotte. And so with the work that I do, what really excites me is that we have an opportunity to grow and to improve with every interaction that I have with individuals. I also have a background in education, and I consider myself a lifelong learner. And so when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, we are challenged each and every day to certainly enhance our skill sets in that very area. And so I've been with Atrium Health now for about 19 years and absolutely love the work that I do. At this time, I'm going to ask B. Rodriguez to share her story.
Thank you, Arlene, and good morning, everybody. So I am B is short for Beatriz Rodriguez. I am, like Arlene, I am an immigrant from Colombia, South America, and I have been with Atrium Health for about 13, 14 years with a little break in between. But how I ended up in healthcare, why I do what I do, I actually wanted to be a nurse, and unfortunately, early in my immigrant experience, didn't have the language skills or the advocacy to really pursue nursing. So, but I was determined to be in healthcare. I was determined to support the beautiful career that is healthcare. So I love doing what I do because I get to take care of those who take care of people. We are in a very unique position in HR to really support our nurses and those who are in the front lines, just to have a great experience, to ensure they have the tools and resources that they need, and make sure that we're serving our patients and our community. So healthcare has always been my passion, and I get to serve them here in healthcare from an HR capacity.
Okay, thank you so much, B. Okay, Tanya?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Bacon. It's nice to meet you all virtually. I'm just very thrilled to be here, and I'm so thankful to Arlene and B, and also to Jill and everyone at UNC Charlotte to invite us. So I guess for me, what got me where I am here, growing up in the Midwest and then moving here 14 years ago from Chicago. So similar experiences to some extent like Arlene and B. I'm a first generation American, so I was born here in the United States, although my parents were not born here. Growing up, everyone always said, generally they would say, you're just very good with people. Have you ever thought about a career in psychology or helping others? And it's just interesting as you go through your own journey, trying to figure out what are your passions, what themes are you seeing in your own career that lend itself to some type of profession. So that was always at the forefront. My undergraduate degree was psychology. I did go to get my master's in HR management later on, and it just seemed to be a perfect fit. Ever since then, I have been more on the talent acquisition recruiting side of human resources because I love to understand what motivates people. How did you get to where you are? What is it that you're seeking? How can we find the best fit for you and to grow yourself personally and professionally? So that's kind of how I landed here. I'm the newest of the team, Arlene and B, here in healthcare. I joined about a year and 4 months ago after having a profession more in professional services and in financial services. So I am very much enjoying healthcare. We'll talk more about it. It is a humbling, honoring industry for me, and I'm learning that very quickly. So great to be here. Appreciate the time. I'll hand it back to Arlene.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Tanya. And so, we are, as you can tell, we are excited certainly to be here to share our stories and our journey along with you. And so one of our very favorite quotes here at Atrium is from Dr. Maya Angelou. And we were very fortunate to have had her as one of our speakers at our annual Diversity Symposium and Conference back in 2013. She says, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, then we all have an opportunity to do just that, to do better. And so our objectives for the brief time that we have today, how can we explore the role of diversity and inclusion, discuss the impact of talent acquisition practices, and then we'll be sharing with you some overall strategies for being successful within the working arena. During this presentation, we also value your input, your perspectives, your thoughts. So there are times where we will have you just to share via the chat box. We have some questions built into the presentation. Would love for you to participate in that way as well. We will save a few minutes towards the very end for Q&A, so be ready for that also. So who are we here at Atrium Health? This is just a snapshot of workforce of who we are within our arena. So close to, over 70,000, if you will, team members throughout the enterprise, 81% female. We have around 6% physicians, 28% nurses. And you can see the demographic breakdown there according to race, as well as by generations. By generations, right now, the majority of Atrium Health are Gen Ys, as you can see, or millennials. 78% or so of the workforce is employed full-time. Most of, as you can see, in terms of our clinical workforce, around 68% or so. The average age is 42%. And so you can see that general demographic. Many of you might have heard about our recent partnership as well with Wake Forest Baptist Health and Wake Forest School of Medicine. And so with this enhanced partnership, we have opportunities to care for even more patients throughout our footprint. For 42 hospitals and more than 1,500 care locations, we're now reaching more than 7 million people across North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Virginia. And this also includes nearly 15 million patient interactions each year. And once again, over 70,000 employees, or what we call teammates, throughout. What really connects all of our efforts is what is known as our National Call to Action, or Equity of Care Pledge. One of our strategies really that guides our overall work. Back in 2016, our CEO, Gene Woods, also then at that time was a president-elect of the American Hospital Association. He was very instrumental with having Atrium Health join several other healthcare systems throughout the country to sign this pledge. And the primary goal was, how can we help to eliminate health disparities? So there are 4 specific goals with which we continue to work: increasing collection of race, ethnicity, and language preference data, making sure that we have accurate data in all of these areas, increasing our cultural competence education, looking at representation in our leadership, in our executive leadership ranks, as well as our hospital board, and then continuing to enhance our community engagement as well as our partnerships. Another extremely important force that guides the work that we do and governs everything in terms of our efforts there at Atrium Health is our mission and our vision. So how can we continue to improve health, elevate hope, and advance healing for all? And to continue to be the first and best choice for care. Within the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, we were so excited for our mission statement. And so we utilized that tagline, for all, to craft our D&I strategy and framework. So looking at our patients, continuing to effectively provide that care for our diverse patients that we have. How are we going to do this as team members? So enhancing our cultural competency in making sure that we are moving in that direction. And then remembering that we're all a microcosm of our community. So developing and maintaining continuing lasting relationships within our community as well. Here are some of our primary focus areas for diversity and inclusion. So increasing, once again, our cultural competence education, sponsoring programming, developing and development to increase diversity in our senior leadership positions, supporting recruitment and in our pipeline strategies so that we are really being reflective of the communities that we serve. When we're taking a look, for example, at social determinants of health, what are some of the root causes for health disparities and how can we address certainly what's in the ground? With our supplier diversity initiatives, strengthening community partnerships and drive economic mobility. And then with our language access, making sure that we are acting as cultural brokers for patients who do not speak English or English is not their primary language. And so here are some of our focal areas. We recognize in the Office of Diversity Inclusion as well, there is no way only 6 individuals who are in that office can drive that work. So we have some amazing help with what we call as our diversity and inclusion infrastructure. So our infrastructure groups are comprised of our diversity councils. The purpose of the council is to provide leadership and governance at the local level at a number of our facilities throughout the footprint of Atrium Health. And then we have what are known as several system resource groups. In other industries, they may be called affinity groups or business resource groups. The purpose of the resource group is to provide a sense of belongingness, promote inclusive practices within the organization. And so both of these infrastructure groups, our councils and our system resource groups, certainly continue to harness and to move forward in addressing specific goals that we have each and every year. When we are talking about the importance of cultural competence, so my specific role at Atrium is to provide culturally competent education and programming for the organization. And so this is how we define what cultural competence is, the ability to provide care and service that meets people where they are. So how can I meet someone where they are? The ability as well to connect successfully with someone from a totally different background or reality than my own. And so this is interspersed, this is integrated in all of the education efforts throughout the organization. And so to that end, here are some examples. We have our annual For All conference. This year, of course, due to the virus, to the pandemic, we were not able to do that. But in years past, for the past 19 years or so, we have convened, several speakers, national, sometimes international speakers, local speakers, where we have a conference that focuses on a number of diversity-related topics, healthcare-related topics. In the past, as I had mentioned before, we have had Dr. Maya Angelou, we have had Surgeon Generals, Doctors Richard Carmona and Jocelyn Elders. We have even had Coach K from the Duke Blue Devils be one of our speakers. Dr. Mazarin Banaji, who is considered to be a guru around unconscious bias. We have had Richard Louis from MSNBC, John Quinones from the show, What Would You Do? So these are some of the caliber of speakers that we have had for this conference. We also have what is known as the Diversity Certificate Program, which is a 6-week facilitator-led experiential program. It is nationally recognized, and it is a very much sought after program where our team members are able to participate throughout the course of the year. Diversity education is also integrated into our new teammate orientation. So from day one, our team members know what the expectations are around our diversity strategy. We have summits, annual summits for system resource groups, as well as around disabilities. We have a diversity leader speaker series where we invite our leaders or executive leaders throughout the system to share their diversity stories in a lunch and learn format. We also have what are known as courageous conversations, and especially this year, given the events around racial and social, injustices, upheaval, and unrest throughout our country, as well as in our communities. The purpose of a courageous conversation is to convene our team members in a safe space for them to share their thoughts. We have a number of e-learning opportunities as well as customized consultation services where we partner with our business partners, HR business partners, to provide interventions and solutions for our leaders. Several tools and resources come along with the portfolio of education that we also provide. New this year, we have a racial injustice toolkit, several resources and tools that is comprised of books, articles, videos, podcasts, you name it, in terms of making sure that we are enhancing cultural competence skill sets, specifically around racial injustice. Courageous Conversations events, we have certainly had several of those as well this year. And who continues to be our support? None other, again, than our diversity infrastructure groups, or our resource groups, as well as our diversity councils. Within the racial social justice education, we also have been focusing on what does it mean to be an ally. So this quote, strong people stand up for themselves, stronger people stand up for others. And so what does it really mean to be an ally, for any group or individuals who are experiencing inequities at any given time? So behaviorally, if I take a look at this ally spectrum, right? If I say that I am an ally, I'm in essence saying that I agree with your cause and I support you. If I am an accomplice or advocate, it means behaviorally, I'm standing with you using my privilege that I may have to challenge the status quo, and even sometimes to risk a personal backlash. If I am now an activist, I'm standing with you, I'm taking those risks, I may even go to jail with you. And if I move into the other realm of truly being what is known as an anti-racist, I actively am fighting to make changes in systems and structures and policies overall. And so behaviorally, so we're exploring this from even more as we move forward. And so just some general overall tips. So as we continue to strengthen our muscle around allyship, remembering to take on the struggle as our own, whatever benefits or privileges that we may have, to see how can we use that for the benefit of others who may lack it. I'm owning my own mistakes, right? I also need to continue to learn and to be aware of my own implicit biases along the way, and understand that whatever education that I may enter into, that I also need to take ownership of that throughout this particular process. And so here we have an opportunity now for your participation, for your engagement. And please go ahead and type in, use the chat box, and you can respond to any one of these questions here. What does it mean to be a global citizen? What does that mean to you? How do you want to show up in the world? In your respective careers, what do you care about? And this will also help frame your decision making, as you will be certainly making some specific decisions about your career direction. So please go ahead and type in, what are some of your thoughts around this? What does it mean to be a global citizen? Or how do you want to show up in the world? What are some things that you really do care about? And I'm going to ask B to monitor that chat box if we're getting any responses throughout. Some of you may need some more time to think about that, and that's okay. So go ahead as we move forward with the presentation, we will definitely come back to this as well. But I'm going to ask right now, B, are we getting any responses at this time?
Yes, so Laura Price tells us that for her it means to be open-minded, welcoming, meeting people where they are in their life. Lisa Maria says, I want to embrace cultural differences. Maria Garcia, to me, being a global citizen means recognizing life as important and valuable worldwide. Ivana Campbell, she wants to thank you. Thank you, Ivana. But for her to be a social citizen means to be aware and in tune with what is going on around the world in our community and stepping outside of our bubbles.
Awesome. Those are wonderful, wonderful responses. So spot on. So thank you definitely for sharing your thoughts, because we think that's important, you know. So how can we continue to impact and to influence and continue to make a difference in this world? And so as you continue to make those decisions about your career, now let's learn a little bit more about what Atrium Health has to offer as an employer. And we're going to turn it over right now to Tanya.
Sure thing. Thank you, everybody. Hope you can hear me okay. I really love all the chats that are coming through. I think we can start to see them. That question really sparked a lot of really great dialogue virtually. So keep them coming,
Yes.
for sure. I just feel like, you know, I like that empathy. Yeah, B. Responding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like in the midst of everything that's going on, we have just amazing opportunities to think globally, to think about our partners, our colleagues, our friends, our family. So keep them going. This is really, really great.
Yes.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about Atrium Health as an employer. You know, keeping in mind all that is going on, diversity, equity, and inclusivity top of mind. But we're also going to talk about, you know, things that are a little bit more about Atrium Health specifically as an organization here in Charlotte. So some of these first areas here that you'll see talk about, you know, how we have been growing. Arlene started to talk a little bit about this too. We're now at 70,000 plus teammates. We call employees here teammates. So you'll hear us reference that from time to time. 11.5 billion net operating revenue, almost 5,000 employed physicians, 42 hospitals, serving a combined population of 7.3 million. A lot of people, I think, have come to realize that Atrium Health is really growing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. You know, back when it was Carolina's healthcare system, it was very sort of Charlotte-centric, but as you can see here on the slide, and you can't read it all, but you can see how big our footprint is through combinations that we're seeing now, through affiliations, and just through general relationships. Oh, and B and Arlene, anytime you want to interject with any information, go for it. But I thought this was helpful just to see how we are expanding even into places like Georgia with Navicent, which was a smaller system in Macon, Georgia, that we have been combined with them for, I want to say, a little over a year and really accelerating that pace. You know, there's another slide that we talk a little bit later on about how we are starting to combine or have combined with Wake Forest Baptist Health. Many of you may have seen in the news about that wonderful influence that's going to have for a medical center here, or medical school here in Charlotte, which will significantly, I think, change the landscape here, sort of demographically, economically. I think it's really going to bring a lot of lift. I think historically, I haven't been in Charlotte forever, but I think when a lot of people, they perceive Charlotte as being very financial services based, but having this new industry, if you will, and learning center here is really going to change things. And I think that will bring with it diversity. So let's move on to the next slides here. We have been nationally recognized for a number of things, and it's hard to see everything on here, but so much of it is also recognized by way of what we are doing in the industry, in our profession, and also how we are diverse in our footprint. Lots of accolades to see here. And again, it's hard to read all of this, but it just really keeps coming, if you will. So we have a lot that we can talk about and a lot of positives. So we wanted to make sure to really showcase this as you think about your own career and what is important to you. And we'll discuss that a little bit more coming up here as well. Here's a little bit more information. We are a nationally recognized clinical system or enterprise. Healthcare organizations often are known as systems, healthcare systems. We here call that an enterprise, and certainly we have a very large patient base, so we can recruit nationally for top clinical expertise. And like we mentioned on the top, lots of clinical folks here, over 5,000 physicians, and APPs almost 2,000. We have a very, very large platform from the front line. And when you hear us talk about frontline, that's really sort of our clinical teammates. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go into the structure, for example, of talent acquisition here. Next slide, please. So this is what I was referring to a little bit earlier. I want to say it was about a month ago. Time has gone by so quickly. A lot of times here at Atrium Health, we joke about regular time and COVID time. We have so much going on right now that one day feels like 1 hour because we're just moving so quickly. So I think it was about a month or two ago where we did formally announce our combination with Wake Forest Baptist Health. This will, of course, expand our footprint, as you see here, to now over 15 million plus patient interactions, over 1,500 care locations, and over 550 physician groups or practices. So there is a tremendous opportunity here. We're really excited about working together and creating lots of synergy, particularly starting here in the Southeast market. Next slide. So now kind of shifting gears a little bit, some things that we have now that we kind of think about employment. You've learned about diversity, our missions, our vision, our goals, our alignment to our For All mission, the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusivity in all that we do. And there's a lot of statistics. If you think about Glassdoor, probably many of you are on that site, which you rightfully should be. So because you are doing your own research in terms of where do you want to go from here in your career, 67% of job seekers consider workplace diversity an important factor when they are considering employment opportunities. I think it's helpful to think about it because, again, as you think about what it is that you're looking for, it's good for you to ask these questions of employers out in the market. What do they value, not only in terms of diversity and employment, but just their overall mission and values? So I just wanted to share that interesting statistic. So next slide, please. Thanks, Jill. These next slides talk a little bit about some of the other ways that we are embracing diversity and how it actually has been very helpful in us in attracting diverse talent. Here we have something that has just been around for a long time, and maybe Arlene I'll have you talk a little bit about Atrium Health Has Talent. It's an annual event. This year we went virtual. Usually it's live, and I think is it in usually the springtime? Is that when it usually is? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And really, it's a platform for our teammates to come to the table. It's if you will, it's a talent show on steroids. So it's been a lot of fun. So this year we're virtual. The MC was our Chief Diversity Officer, Fernando.
Yes.
He did a phenomenal job, and we just got so much. Feedback out of it. This was my first year of experiencing it. So Arlene and Bea, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear about what your experience has been and how it's been embraced within
Yes.
and also in the community.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, when they first hear about a talent show at an enterprise or a corporate organization, they kind of go back and feel like, what is this? The reality is that it builds culture, it builds camaraderie, and it has brought to it has allowed teammates the opportunity to just be themselves and share the other side of them with the rest of their own teams or with the rest of the community. And we have talented people. Oh my God, this is not just any show. Our teammates just blow our minds every year. So I think it is a key part of our culture now because teammates look forward to it. They rehearse all year long. They create their own groups because again, it gives us an opportunity to take a break of the very serious work that we do every day and embrace that other part of us and bring our whole self to work and share it with everyone.
Yes, absolutely. And just to piggyback off of that, it's also a family affair. Right. So we are able to, at those events, can bring your family and friends and even folks who don't necessarily work with Atrium. And so it does, according, to what B says, it does create such a positive culture and fun. It's just a lot of fun, too, as well.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. And it was really interesting this year. It was great because Chara Reese on the left is actually from Navicin. So it was really cool. And I would assume that next year we'll expand it to our friends at Wake Forest Baptist Health. So it's going to be really cool to see it.
Yeah.
When we showcased it internally, it was a live stream. It was like on a Friday night. It was really cool. We actually, our own president and CEO, Gene Woods, put out and broadcast his very first music video. He has a background very strong in music. I'm pretty sure you can look for it on LinkedIn. It's pretty amazing. He's had 2 of them so far. So I don't know where he finds the time for this, but it's just, I think it really speaks, again, I use the word, it's very humbling to work in a culture such as this, where your president and CEO can really go out there and do what he is passionate about, and it is so well embraced. So it speaks back to our diversity, how we really understand each other and can accept and embrace and welcome, different talents, different skill sets. So I just wanted to highlight some of this. It's just been a really neat journey so far. So let's move on to the next slides. So here really is just a little bit more about our why, and we started to talk a little bit about this. We talked about, and Arlene referenced, for all. You hear this every day in our organization. What we do is for all: health, hope, and healing for all. And it really grounds us and motivates us to think about how we are serving the community, our patients, and our teammates in an HR role. So B alluded to, in HR, we are serving those who serve others, if you will. So it really doesn't matter what your role is within Atrium Health. For all is really the foundation of what we do and what we strive for. So, as our workforce becomes more diverse, we become stronger. We have more culture, competence, sensitive care to better serve our communities. Social determinants of health is something we're very, very focused on. And so having that understanding and that for all mission really ties exactly to serving communities that need it the most in our community, in our market. And I think here are some more statistics. According to McKinsey in 2018, companies in the top 20 quartile for workforce diversity are 33% more likely to financially outperform their less diverse counterparts. So it is quite interesting. What we are doing is aligning to our values and our mission, but we're also doing very well financially through, and it was because I think people see the passion that we have. Our patients return to that. They feel welcomed here, and that just speaks volumes. So it almost becomes like an easy win from a financial perspective. So I encourage you, as you look for organizations in your career, again, going back to the mission and the values, and what does that mean? How does it resonate to you? So I'm just looking at the chat to see, I'm seeing a lot of really great comments. If there are any questions, do continue to bring them up. I might pause for just a second and take a look at what we have here. Ivana, yeah, the medical school, I did see that earlier. I agree that having that there will really bridge the gap, because there is such a wide margin between our underserved communities. If you all ever have a chance to listen to our Senior Vice President of Community and External Affairs, her name is Dr. Kenyal Coleman. She's just an amazing person and has so much to give and to talk about in this realm. So if we ever have that opportunity for you to hear her speak, and when we can go more in the public, if you will, she's a wealth of knowledge on that. So love this talent show idea. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I saw your comments. So, okay, so now let's shift gears a little bit and talk maybe a little bit more, if you will, tactically for the next few minutes here, for maybe the next 15, 20 minutes. This will just kind of help you, again, as you think about your next steps, what talent acquisition means and how you may partner with that function within organizations. So here, and you'll hear it called different things. Some people call it recruiting, talent management. We call it talent acquisition here. And it's really a part of HR. It's the recruiting arm that brings talent into the organization. We, as you can no guess, we partner very much with Arlene and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We want to make sure we have affirmative action plans in place from a compliance perspective. We really think about that and how that is tied to our strategic hiring decisions. We actually have a very structured way of interviewing here, and I'll talk a little bit about some tips and tricks for you all too, about what that means. Very structured interview guides that really eliminate bias and really speak to the fit and how the person, quite frankly, is qualified for the role. That really is what matters. You know, are we hiring the right talent? Is it the right fit for you and for the organization? Take the bias out, take all of those other factors, and that is really what we're focused on. To help with that too, when we do have a need for suppliers, we absolutely partner with diversity-focused suppliers. Whether it be people who provide a service or a product, diversity is very, very important to us, and we have a whole discipline around that with Less Marginally here to help with that. So then here we have some other ways. So some people ask about, well, you know, what are your recruiting strategies for diversity? And a lot of them we listed here. A lot of it is how we call source for talent. You'll hear that word a lot, like sourcing. That's kind of a recruiting term to say this is how we are looking for talent in the market. So we call it sourcing. And in this day and age, it's very easy to reach the market via LinkedIn and other organizations. By the way, I'm happy to take a LinkedIn from any of you if you would like to reach out to me. I'd be happy to take that. We have a lot of women-focused groups, as you all may be aware, on LinkedIn: Women in Leadership, Women in Healthcare, Women's Diversity Network, a lot of minority-focused groups listed here. African American Leadership, Women 2.0, LGBT Professional Network, Professionals with Disabilities, Latin America Network. I certainly encourage all of you, if you haven't already, and you probably have, to really get connected on LinkedIn and other areas as it relates to these channels. We do a lot of heavy social media on platforms like Twitter, our internal networking through Yammer. Indeed is another big platform that we use very heavily as well. So I'll talk a little bit about the way that talent acquisition is structured here. And again, it will be different from organization to organization. We really have, if you will, four arms, if you will, of talent acquisition. One is the Nurse Recruitment Center. As you saw, it is a very, very large population here. We have a number of teammates in the nursing profession. And so we do have a dedicated Nurse Recruitment Center that really focus and enhance that candidate experience and really focus on talent pipeline. Dr. Jackie Apollo is my peer who oversees the Nurse Recruitment Center. And they do a lot, not only in terms of recruiting from the market, but career advancement programs as well. Once someone is here, the Nurse Recruitment Center can help with educational assistance. Professional nurse clinical advancement programs, and career progressions, ladders, as we call them here. So again, that might be a term you hear and something that when you look at organizations, you'll want to know, well, once I'm into the organization, where do I go from here? What resources do you have to help me develop as an individual? Whether they be formalized, informalized, I think that's good for you to think through. So, so that's the Nurse Recruitment Center. We also have an executive recruiting arm, which is part of my area as well. And as executive recruiting here really is defined as anyone coming in as a director and above. There's a lot of focus, and this was a start for us to really think about two things: our executive recruiting hiring policy and the signing of the parity pledge. I'll talk about the second bullet here. Our executive recruiting hiring policy really provides a commitment to a diverse interview panel and a diverse slate of candidates. That has been something that has been structured very much so this year, and it's been very, very helpful to us to really make sure that we are hiring talent that is diverse. One thing, and you may have seen some studies, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there is a drop in diversity and gender as individuals move in their career. Some professions have more of a severe funnel, if you will, others do not. Healthcare overall, I think the statistics are such that at our VP and above level, we have something around 13.5% of African American executives, and around 40%, I'm gonna have to go back and check on that, for women. Historically and traditionally, healthcare does hire a lot of women. And so you compare that, for example, from where I worked before at Ernst & Young, I think the executive rankings only had, and this is public knowledge, 20%. Professional services, again, is a different type of industry. So again, as you think about your career in what your profession is, these are all components to come into play. Another resource that I might refer you to is parity.org. The Parity organization is one that we have signed, and you can go to parity.org. Our pledge there is at the executive levels, we will we will interview one person of color and one woman, one female. So go to parity.org and you can see a number of organizations who are very much in line with that philosophy. Promotions and retention. I talked a little bit about this earlier. As you come to an organization like Atrium Health and Healthcare, or wherever you may go, it is true that promotions and retentions are just as important, especially as it relates to diversity and recruitment. Like we said, we've really done a great job. Minority promotions have reached 43% in the third quarter, which is an increase. So we are really focused on this, and this is a wonderful, wonderful statistics to see. So I think that as you talk to people again, the more I talk about it, the more it'll hopefully help you, is to think through all these things and what that means. So promotions or retention as it relates to diversity. And as it relates to you and your profession will be important for you to consider and ask questions to that employer. Okay, so that was a lot of information. We've got a little bit more, but then we're going to open up for questions at the end. So this is a very general open question. Now that you've learned a little bit about Atrium Health and about diversity and things to consider as you're going on your journey, what is important to you as you explore career opportunities? No right or wrong way to answer this, but would love to hear your ideas in the chat. And with that, I'm taking a quick coffee break. And for everyone, it may be different depending on your profession. So, but as you're thinking this through, what is important to you? Or maybe what is not important to you as the reverse? Paid time off, work-life balance. Very good. Very important, Maria. Yeah. So having that information and that philosophy and understanding, that's going to be important. Yep. Professional development. Yep. I would agree. One note I have on that from a personal experience is when I finished my graduate studies, I moved to Chicago to do the big city thing, whatever, do that whole thing. I had a couple of different opportunities to look at. And one of them was, to be quite frank, this was really interesting. One was with a media company, very, very well known. The other was more in a recruiting agency that was also well known. The pay was different. Actually, the media company pay was much higher, but I saw more opportunity for growth in the recruiting environment. So it was a hard decision for me because it's easy to get pulled into, well, quite frankly, the money, right? But I really had to step back and say, where do I see these companies? What do they value? What am I going to get out of it? What is the development that I can see there? And bar none, I know I made the right decision. So it was hard, like I said, because you're swayed by some really cool things, a really big brand name, all that fun stuff, but it didn't speak to me. So I'm going to look at some of the other things we see here. Pleasant environment, enrichment, yep, strengths and talents, ability to move upward, absolutely, security. These are great responses. Yeah, relocation services, that's a very, very good point. It will be interesting on that note to see with the pandemic how remote work will be influenced. I'm wondering if you're starting to hear that at all. I think it depends on the profession. So much of what we do is patient facing, but if you think about the work that we are now doing in serving patients virtually via a virtual hospital, when we have issues and we have a COVID, for appointments for COVID-19 assessment, it's changing. So I think relocation will always be there, but it will be interesting because you may have more opportunity to, live where you would like. And so that's something to consider. These are great. Thank you. I really like these responses. Thank you, everybody. Someone else mentioned also is work is flexible, remote work. Yes, yes, I agree. I agree. Good. See if there's any others that come in before we move on. Okay, great. We'll keep them coming and we'll go back to them. So on that note, when you think about what's important to you as you explore career opportunities, this is an example of what we call our enterprise leadership imperatives at Atrium Health. You'll see there are six areas of focus. This is fairly new, so a lot of this really started from a leadership perspective on down. These are attributes, if you will, maybe competencies that we aspire to help us align to our mission, vision, and values. And so thinks critically and strategically, envisions and enacts the future, connects and collaborates across Atrium Health, builds and leads inclusive, high-performing leadership teams, understands and shapes the external environment, builds talent for and across the system. These are initiatives and imperatives that are very much at the core and help enable our success or vision. So I tell you this because as you look at organizations, there may or may not be a similar enterprise leadership imperative. It may be called something different, but as you think about these 6 areas here, these are areas of importance. That's not to say that if you haven't had experience in there, a person would not be considered. But as you get here, certainly it's something that we want to know that person has an alignment and a value to. And in a minute, I'll talk a little bit about how that kind of transcends, or not, that's not the right word, how that also can be influenced in your interview process. So with that, we can move on to some of the next slide. Thanks, Jill. Okay, so quick thing here. We're going to talk a little bit about behavioral-based interviewing. I'm going to ask in the chat, is anyone familiar, well, I put it up on the screen already, but is this a concept that you have heard of? I don't want to be too redundant, but is this group familiar with behavioral-based interviewing? You can just do a yes or no if you want to. Mm-hmm. Might be new. Okay, well, that's good. So we can teach you a couple tricks. Thank you. Yes. Adora Farida, yes. Okay, good. Some yes, some no's. So we'll talk a little bit about this. And every company may have a different approach on behavioral-based interviewing. What I would say is behavioral-based interviewing is one way of interviewing talent. It is not the only way that someone may be assessed for fit within an organization, but it's a very effective one. What behavioral-based interviewing is also known as competency-based interviews or targeted selections. I put this in bold here because I think this is important to know. Behavioral-based interviewing really focuses on questions that delve into your past behaviors. The thought being that your past behaviors and successes, or even not successes, really demonstrate future behavior and success. So, and here candidates develop stories to illustrate that they have the necessary skills for the position and or the employer. So behavioral-based interviewing is different, for example, than what I sometimes hear as situational-based interviewing. And let me give you an example. Later on in this slide, there'll be some questions, but situational-based interviewing might be, and maybe you've experienced this in your interviews, when the leader, the hiring leader, or maybe someone in HR or recruiting says to you or asks you the question, how would you assess a shortage of nurses? How would you take care of that from a leadership perspective? The key word here is how, or how would you, and would is the other one. So as you can see in that question, they're asking you for how you would do it. They're not asking you, have you done it? Do you see the difference there? And so if you have done it, you can take that story that I mentioned and talk about that experience of how you were able to serve or bridge the gap for a shortage of nurses in Unit A, by doing, and what did you do, what happened. If someone asks you, how would you, or anything like that, you could almost kind of say, well, I can just make up the perfect story. You know what I mean? So because maybe up here, you know what the answer is, but you may not have experienced this. I hope that makes sense. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But behavioral-based interviewing is used, again, past behavior predicts future success. It's used as an indicator of personal attributes and characteristics. It looks at your thought processes and problem solving skills. Again, what did you do? And I'll talk about that in a minute. Here's important, less chance of candidate making up answers. Because if someone a situational based question is going to say, well, how would you tackle a budget issue or a staffing issue? And again, you can make up any answer that sounds perfect, whether or not you've actually had that experience. And so I think a lot of this lends itself to making sure that it is the right fit, again, both for you and the organization. Quite frankly, the wrong hire does cost an organization at 1.5 times the salary. So it's best to know that that fit is spot on in the front end and that you have room for development and can be very successful at that organization. So let's see here. So a little bit more. How do you prepare for behavioral-based interviews? I won't go over this because there's a lot of words on here in detail, but and you probably already started to do a lot of these. Go over your resume. Think about the experiences that you put on there. Your areas of responsibility. Think about stories. Again, the word is stories. What stories do you have to tell about the success you had here? And again, where you may have not had a success and what you learned from that. And again, it kind of talks about that here. Have anywhere from 6 to 10 stories. You may not need that many. Some of them are positive outcomes. And again, half that started out negative and then turned positive. Stories that allow you to stand out. And then one thing too is when you're looking at the job description, thinking through, what story is going to tell about my experience that lend itself to that qualification, that match that qualification. So, and Jennifer's putting some good chats in here too. I also asked to tell about a time when you encountered X. Exactly. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, Jennifer. That's exactly right. Because it's not just having them tell you about the story. What did you learn or what was the outcome? So a lot of times interviewers forget to ask, that's all great, but what was the outcome? So we'll go to the next slide here. So here is another acronym that you can also research or maybe you've heard about called the STAR technique. And it stands for situation, task, action, and result. So this is how you can very clearly convey your skills through, again, that storytelling. I'll start at the left here, the situation. So when you think about something that happened, an interviewer is going to ask you a question, think about what was the situation, when and where, give the background information, the task, describe the challenge and expectations. What did you actually do to address that situation? And the actions, I'm getting ahead of myself. What was the task that you identified and the action to get that task completed? What did you do? What tools or resources? And then again, I alluded to this sort of the result, like what actually happened. So situation, task, action, result, something that'll be very, very helpful for you as you prepare. And on the next slide, this is actually an example that I found. This one is not related to healthcare. I tried to find a healthcare one, but I ran out of time. So this one is about a sales one, but from left to right, situation at my company last May, the products division was experiencing no profitability and slow sales. Task. I was challenged with motivating the sales force and developing a new marketing strategy. And then here's the action. What did you do to address the situation? I developed a new training program for sales representatives, innovative techniques and marketing strategies. And then the result, product sales increased from 20,000 to 40,000 in just 6 months. So I hope that helps. I'm happy to answer any questions more about it, but this is just giving you some tools in your toolkit as you start to interview. So behavioral-based interviews and the STAR technique. So let's move on here. A couple other slides really quick to help you prepare for behavior-based interviews. Use different examples for stories. So, different ways of thinking through things and stories that address the same question. Different parts of your life. It's okay to do that. It doesn't have to be very, very recent. It could even be something that you learn in a project, in any initiatives or task force you were on, in a recent job, in an internship. Anticipate lots of probing questions. Another personal experience I had was when I was in graduate school, I was interviewing for what I thought was going to be my dream job. Back then, it was called Anderson Consulting, now Accenture, and I was just enamored with what they did. I was like, oh, this is going to be so great. And so I go to the interview, and they did ask lots of probing questions to which I was not prepared. I think it's safe to say that they did not think I was a fit for the organization. but I really was not prepared. And I wish in hindsight I had some of these tips and tricks. So do anticipate lots of probing questions. Keep your resume updated so you always have fresh stories. Moving on, let's see a couple other things here. Here are a couple potential behavior-based questions that you might hear. Describe a time when you were faced with a stressful situation that demonstrated your coping skills. Give me a specific example of a time when you used good judgment and logic in solving a problem. Explain a time when you had to use presentation skills to influence someone's opinion. What is your typical way of dealing with conflict? Give me an example. So as you can see, they're asking for describe. Tell me about, give me an example. It's all based on your experiences, not how would you attack dealing with conflict. So hope that makes sense. But these are some examples that you'll see. So know your resume. We talked a little bit about this. That's just a sample resume. You don't have to, I just put that up there for visual. Choose at least three stories. I know the other one said 6 to 10, but use your, think of what makes sense for you. 3 to 6 might be good. Use the STAR method, practice your stories, and use a list of interview questions. I think the key here is, be prepared, and the rest will all fall into place. It always does. So, okay, next slide. I think we're getting towards the end of the presentation. Just a little thing around navigating virtual interviews. It is very hard to read a lot of this, but basically we are seeing many, many more instances of virtual interviews and presentations such as this. So I think a lot of these are it's kind of common sense, but it's helpful to kind of talk about these. Make sure you have your list of questions ready to go that you want to provide when you're talking to the interviewer. Prepare for a lot of questions. I don't think that's going to change at all. Appearance, be choosy about what you're wearing. Avoid busy patterns if you can. I just wore a black sweater today. I do have a nice necklace on. But kind of keep it as little as, so it's not distracting from the content and what you are saying. Location, think about where you are. It's okay if you don't have an office to do your interview, but as long as you're not sitting in a street corner, that might be ideal not to be doing that. You could have it done in your kitchen table. Try to minimize distractions. I do think that many, many organizations are much more forgiving, if you will, about dogs barking in the background, about children running in to see what mom and dad are up to. So there's a little bit of grace that I'm seeing with that, but things to keep in mind. Lighting and audio, natural light is best. If you don't have that, just some kind of a light or something that makes you look very nice, And then testing. Before we got on this, we had to test and, that this platform was going to work for us, Hopin. And what do you know? It didn't work for me at first. So make sure you're testing it and that you're prepared and ready to go. So just a little plug on navigating virtual interviews. Okay, so I think rounding out, and we are definitely going to open up for questions. I know that was a lot of content, but let's start the dialogue this way too with question 3, or continue the dialogue. Share a plan of action or one thing that you will commit to doing differently as a result of this session. What's one thing that you can think differently about? Maybe something you learned. And then we'll open it up for more questions too. But this was a question we wanted to round out to get your thoughts. Yeah.
And you all have been doing a great job with the chat box information. So definitely keep your thoughts and perspectives coming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, be more patient and embracing of differences. Or on the allyship spectrum, I need to be more towards the right side of that. That was a really great slide. I love that slide. I think it helps to really think about those different, if you will, spectrum, categories within the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Company's mission, great. Be aware of what others may expect from me. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great responses.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for your awesome responses. From Ivana, wonderful tips. Interviewing is a two-sided process. You're absolutely correct about that. Candidates need to remember they're evaluating the company too, not just the other way around. Okay. And then from Adoril, although I had heard about the types of interview questions that were discussed, I know I need to practice those specific types well in advance. Yeah.
Don't worry, I've been there. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad. These are wonderful. This is good feedback and good commentary from everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, great. I know that you, the three of you, are ready to do some Q&A with us. So if everyone would hit the sessions button on the left, you will be directed to a session room. Those of you who have been coming to A to I and know the Hopin platform already know that you can unmute your cameras and mics up to 10 people in that session room. So I would encourage you to do this and interact with our wonderful presenters today. And then when you're done, when you're finished, go ahead and mute again so that it gives someone else a chance to ask a question. So we will see all of you in the session room. So sessions on the left, and then you'll choose Q&A.